About a year ago, I made a video warning people in the lead up to the release of Starfield. Let's see how well it's aged. Like the finest of wines. Copada, because I told you so. What's that? It gets better after 100 hours? So does getting your balls crushed in a vice. That doesn't mean it's good. But wait, I hear you cry. Your life's so devoid of value and meaning that you attach yourself to the media you consume and equate criticism with an attack on you personally. If you're such an expert, then why don't you do better? Okay. It's been centuries since humans left the homeworld, spreading out among the stars. The united colonies have led the charge, spurred on by the last-ditch effort of old-world democracies to escape their dying world. Some blame the changing climate, others greed or science run amok, perhaps even their gods abandoning them. But even now, no one really knows why. Time passed as time does, but new worlds quickly gave way to old problems. The fresh optimism passed and the UC fell into stagnation, hamstrung by its own bureaucracy as it tried to adapt to this new frontier. All the while, corporations like var'uun stayed one step ahead of the law. Dissatisfied with the slow, steady decline and the colony's demands, Aquila was the first to secede from the UC. The Rangers soon founded the Free Star Collective to be a law unto themselves, desperate to stop the bleeding, as one by one, planet after planet opted for independence. The United Colonies forces elected to put any dissenters down, and put them down hard, lest they cripple the whole. What was expected to be a quick, decisive victory against the so-called collective was soon drawn out into a decades-long conflict. The UC soon realised their mistake in just how much they had underestimated the territory and the Free Star's resolve. With both sides wholly focused on the fighting, many had begun to slip through the cracks. With the rise of the Crimson Fleet, they were all too eager to prey on trade ships, invaluable supplies, reinforcements, anything that could turn a profit. Finally, exhausted by the fighting and their resources spent, the two sides met and declared a truce. Now the UC languishes even further, without enough manpower to even fully staff their own territories. As for the collective, the Crimson Fleet have grown like a cancer at their heart. The Rangers stretched thin as crime runs rampant. All the while, the elusive, enigmatic House var'uun sits at the edges of known space, completely uninterested in the goings-on of the colonies, as if the entire planet went quiet. With resources and local systems almost entirely depleted, and now an insatiable demand not to destroy, but rebuild, many illegal mining ops have sprung up across known space, all looking to make their fortune on the next big deposit. It is here that the player enters. Whether down on their luck, desperate to repay a debt, or trying to escape their past, the player has scraped by from world to world for months now. Few have made an effort to speak with them, the rest of these dusties looking down on them, as the player has struggled to even make a fraction of their quota underground. Lynn's patience has long since worn thin, leaving the player to their own devices. The swift and unceremonious end to their contract is now only a matter of time. It's here, however, deep within a cave system after wandering off on their own, that the player breaks out into a chamber. Towards the back, a strange, otherworldly artifact that they just can't help investigating. It triggers a vision of the cosmos, radiant and beautiful, overwhelming in its grandeur as the artifact hums in song. Waking back up at the outpost on the surface, Hella, Lynn, and the rest of the outfit are baffled by the discovery. More importantly, however, it's already had a hit on the trade exchange from someone in New Atlantis. The Dusties are about to get the biggest payday of their lives, and it's all thanks to the player. Celebrations are quickly cut short, however, when Hella's listing draws some unwanted attention from another buyer, the Crimson Fleet, who wanted more. And they won't be coming to us nicely. An uneasy night settles in as the Dusties, hardly trained in combat, wait vigilantly. Near dawn, Barrett's ship comes barreling down, some pirates in pursuit, as everyone defends themselves. Having initially planned to just take the thing and run, Barrett's convinced to stay behind and defend them, but only at a compromise. Instead, the player, the one who found the artifact, is directed to cover Vasco as the robot loads the strange artifact aboard the ship, fighting off pirates as they go. With only the robot left company, the player takes the helm, shakes off the ships in pursuit, and at last, space opens up before them. New Atlantis awaits, and a whole new adventure. Landing at New Atlantis, the player is brought before Constellation, the group more than wary at the stranger's appearance in Barrett's place. Vasco, however, has also delivered the piece of the artifact, and verifies the player's story. Constellation is a group formed very recently and out of mutual interest, each member brought together after coming into contact with an artifact of their own. Whether this is by fate or chance, well, that is difficult to say. What little they've learned of these strange objects, each bringing a fragment of their own, is inconclusive, but that hasn't stopped them yet. Whether just for credits or the power that they can all sense within these artifacts, Constellation's interest in exploration is really just a front, a convenience. The reality is, these artifacts are dangerous, and their true goal is in tracking them down and identifying the source. But what of its members? Sarah Morgan, a former soldier in the United Colonies forces and their unofficial leader. Her kindly, diplomatic nature is ultimately hiding one overwhelmed by guilt and trying to make amends for what she took part in during the war. Barrett, ever relaxed and a lifelong explorer, he nevertheless understands the gravity of their mission and the need to see it through. Sam Coe, a lawbringer who grew up in the rougher parts of Freestar space, pushed to the brink after his daughter was killed by the fleet. He's less interested in understanding the artifacts, and more keeping them out of the hands of criminals, frequently coming to blows with Sarah over their differing ideals, not to mention the lingering scars and animosity from the war. Finally, Andreja, a secretive soul who keeps everyone at arm's length. Of course, she is later revealed to be a former member of House var'uun, but the player can't help but feel a nagging doubt about where her allegiance truly lies. Each and every one of these people, though their reasons may differ, all brought together by the artifacts and unlocking the mystery behind them. They were initiated in much the same way the player was, so it's only natural the player is invited to join as well. The goal? Find the rest of these fragments and uncover their true purpose. Speaking of which, as the player's contribution joins the rest, it almost looks like the pieces are starting to form a gateway. Once finished with Constellation, the player is now free to pursue faction questlines and explore as they wish. No more railroading. With the low stakes, lack of impending risk, and Constellation the only ones interested in collecting these artifacts, at least beyond their monetary value, the player's free to pursue things and their own interests in whatever order they like. A game all about exploration now allows it. As for the rest of Constellation, they're going their own way, each off to a different planet to explore rumors of artifact fragments appearing in known space. Because of this, the player's other pursuits will organically overlap with the story's overarching goal from time to time, as they bump into Constellation members in their adventures, even partnering up when needed. But where are these rumored fragments? Perhaps aboard the long-lost Crix's legacy, or among Ryujin's vaults, beneath a hazardous wasteland from a battle between the Collective and UC long ago, far into the desert wastes of Aquila, a priceless relic within the Red Mile, floating aboard a desolate spaceship near a dying star, in the possession of prospectors who don't truly understand what they've found, deep within the wilderness and changing the wildlife around it. Most of all, no puzzles, no temples, no magic powers. Instead, a reminder of what started this all off, as the player organically comes into contact with each one, and a lingering question around what their true purpose will reveal. One by one, the player begins to assemble the pieces back at Constellation's headquarters through their efforts, and yet, after each one, that same glorious sensation on touching the artifacts begins to fade. Light and sound grows weaker each time. Something feels wrong, but the player's mission is still clear. That is, until the parameters change. After retrieving the first few artifacts, they are confronted out in space by an otherworldly ship and figures wearing armor the likes of which no one has seen. They speak in a strange, unknown language, beings that are completely alien to anything in known space, but the message is clear. Constellation must stop what they're doing or face the consequences. Without another word, this otherworldly ship disappears back beyond the borders of known space. Where once there was no difficulty in finding artifacts, now similarly strange figures speaking in a tongue that defies all logic, all comprehension, have started appearing wherever the player finds artifacts. Constellation are on high alert, but each member continues to push for more artifacts, more answers, as the gateway at their headquarters grows closer to completion. It's close now, so very close, but they're missing something, some piece of the design. The player continues their adventures, that is, until the figures begin to show their true power, inverting gravity, stopping time completely, reshaping reality on a whim. It is here that the player and Constellation start to understand they are in way over their head. What good does a rifle serve, a melee weapon, or grenade when your enemy defies all natural law? These powers are beyond mortal comprehension. It's as if fighting gods. This secret war that has been fought between Constellation and these strange, otherworldly figures until now changes when it spills over into the streets of New Atlantis. The figures appear in force, a number that no one could have ever anticipated, as all of Constellation quickly rallies together at headquarters. These beings must be stopped, even though they have never even uttered a word. Two opposite sides, seemingly at odds, and yet it seems like they don't even know why they're fighting. What starts off better than expected quickly goes wrong as Constellation finds itself overwhelmed by sheer numbers. The strange figures are massacring New Atlantis forces as the entire city burns, but they're not alone either. For the first time in living memory, members of House var'uun have been seen outside their home planet, and they have allied themselves with the enemy. Gradually, the player is pushed further and further back, until Constellation are making their last stand inside the main chamber, the gateway sitting out in the open, completely unprotected. As var'uun cultists and the strange figures break inside, Andreja finally reveals her hand. To this point, she has been the lingering mystery within Constellation, always elusive in her answers, keeping anyone who tries to get close at a distance. Despite her cold demeanor, each and every member had grown to trust her. She had turned her back on var'uun. She had fought alongside them, shared a meal, shed blood together. All of this comes crashing down when she pulls her ceremonial dagger from her belt and stabs the player's closest companion through the heart. In a blur, the crowd of figures move to secure the gate, Andreja with them, and disappear away as the fighting comes to a stop. Piles and piles of bodies litter the streets. New Atlantis is in ruins. Traders that the player had been regularly interacting with only a few days prior lay on the ground, their skin cold to the touch. At the heart of Constellation's headquarters, their companion lies sprawled on the ground. They are not wholly dead, but experiencing a fate perhaps worse than that. Their skin is cold, their breathing shallow, and eyes wide open, yet their pupils have turned completely black. It is here the realization sets in. Constellation never stood a chance. What you fought for, what all these people died for, was only delaying the inevitable. It was only a matter of time. These beings, with the entirety of House var'uun at their back, were simply toying with you. It's over. They have all the pieces of the gateway in their possession, and all of this was for naught. One of the surviving members of Constellation steps forward and offers some small comfort. The gateway everyone spent so long trying to construct has a tracking device on it, and it's pinging from an all too familiar location. As the player steps out onto the surface of Earth, they take in the surroundings that no one else has laid eyes on in centuries. The atmosphere is completely gone, the planet looking directly out at the stars. The ground is a dead, sickly grey colour, the player kicking up small clouds of dust in zero gravity as they move. Ahead, they approach the ruins of a NASA launch facility as the pinging from the tracker grows louder and louder. Around them are chunks of rock that drift slowly by, reminders of the total environmental collapse humanity had faced not so long before. Outside the facility, strange globules of light, not gas, not solid nor liquid, bob slightly and dance at some unseen force, completely resistant to the lack of gravity. It stretches, reacts, before twisting back in on itself. The surviving members of Constellation are standing just outside, and, falling in behind, join the player as they step inside. What at first appears deserted quickly springs to life as members of House var'uun are waiting, using the zero gravity to their advantage. A ruthless firefight ensues as Constellation pushes deeper into the facility. What starts out as old-world architecture begins to shift. Known shape soon changes into impossible, non-Euclidean designs. Up becomes down, enemies stand parallel to the wall, or is it now the ground? One by one, each member of Constellation stays back to hold the line as the player progresses further into the facility. Entering the final room, a launch pad that once held a shuttle in centuries past has been turned into a ceremonial chamber. Writing covers the walls, and dozens upon dozens of var'uun cultists are knelt in a circle around what lies at the center of the room. The gateway. The artifacts spring to life at the player's approach, but before they get close, a lone figure steps out of it, one of those otherworldly beings that had caused all this. They stand back, attempting to communicate with you, but it's no use. You can't allow these beings to take control of the gate, and combat is inevitable. With the figure dead, the player approaches their corpse and retrieves an item, a focusing crystal of some kind. On touching the item, a sharp vision assails them, images of darkness and subliminal hissing, but only for a moment. With nothing left to do, the cultists knelt in some silent, otherworldly prayer. The player interacts with the gateway and slowly puts the lens back into its heart. At long last, it's complete, and you step into whatever waits beyond. You think back to that first time you touched an artifact, how uplifting it was, how it felt as if you were looking into the heart of the galaxy, felt all life at once. On stepping through the gateway, however, you are met with only cold and dark. There is no music, no light. It's as if all senses have faded into nothing. Before you, an unfathomable space stretches out into the infinite as those same strange particles stream by. As you float downwards towards some kind of platform far ahead of you, something is moving around you, unseen. Something very, very large. Sounds of a pulsing heartbeat slowly fade in as you push further down to the source of this strange place. Something moving in the darkness all around you. You can't quite catch a proper glimpse of it, but it appears to be biding its time. Landing softly on the platform, you step forward towards a small group of those strange particles, the only source of light in this strange, alien place. Touching it, you are assailed with visions, and, at long last, you understand. Before you have a chance to process everything, more of those figures appear out of the gloom, attacking you with everything they've got. Their powers are weakened here, but you have lost your weapons. In their place, you now have access to powers of your own. You feel like a god, blowing them aside as if they're nothing more than toys, as more and more of the figures appear. Their combat cries gradually grow less and less alien, and closer to English, to something more familiar to you. As the final enemy dies, they utter a single word, stop, and with power, finally comes understanding. Once they have all been defeated, you return to the particles once again and touch it, absorbing some kind of light as they fade into nothing. Your mind reels as it processes a sea of images once again. You see old world scientists harvesting the first particles that fell to Earth, their eyes wide in amazement. You see the first successful launch and spacecraft spread out among the stars. You see a field once lush with life evaporate in the blink of an eye, leaving nothing but ruin and dirt. You see a figure use one of those strange powers before collapsing in pain. All the while, the humming of a million cultists of var'uun grows louder. At its crescendo, a serpent bigger than anything you have seen rears up out of the darkness, hissing its fangs in malice. Suddenly, you snap back awake, but you are not standing in that strange place anymore, nor the NASA facility or your ship. You are somewhere else entirely, a strange ship, but the powers are now yours to wield. This is the start of New Game Plus, but it's a one-time deal. Ascending to become one of those beings has brought with it new, strange powers and a whole new experience, but at the same time, everything has its cost. It's here that the game's central theme reveals itself, entropy. It finally makes sense. The age-old struggle between life and death, heat and cold, light and dark, everything and nothing. The particles that are now at your command are revealed to be the essence of the universe itself. Some call it stardust, ether, alien matter, whatever name it goes by. It is the material that humans harvested when it first fell to Earth so long ago. With it came the promise of a new age, and a privileged few gained access to power beyond imagining. These otherworldly beings, these augurs. For all the possibilities it brought, however, by the time people began to understand what was happening, it was already too late. In harvesting the particles, humanity chose short-term gain for a devastating consequence they couldn't have possibly foreseen. The particles grant incredible gifts, but wielding this power accelerates entropy within the universe itself. Energy, essence, life, It is taken from one place and completely and utterly consumed by the other. By the time humanity became aware of the entropy that was fast approaching Earth, even our greatest minds could not stop it. Indeed, it was among the first of the augurs, one bearing the name of var'uun, that first realized what was happening. The question then was one of necessity, of time, and whatever means left available to us all. Thus, a schism was formed between these augurs, once humans, now elevated into something so much more that they have transcended human language and understanding, adopting a maximalist Nietzschean ideology that this is something to be embraced, that the end will bring about the new. House var'uun was formed under the guise of the Great Serpent. This serpent is a metaphor that represents entropy itself, total heat death of the universe, and the end of all things. Though it speaks much about how the serpent perpetuates itself, that there is great spiritual, social, and political power within its beliefs, the real leaders of var'uun care nothing about what comes after the end. It is not mustache-twirling evil, nor evil for evil's sake, but power wielded by those who believe they deserve it, at the expense of quite literally everyone and everything else. Everyone else can face the consequences. But as with all actions, there requires an equal and opposite reaction. Within the augurs, an equally capable faction seeks to restrain use of the essence, halt the entropy at all costs, and find a way to stop the approach of the serpent. It is in the midst of this schism that you enter into the true endgame, and an entirely different experience within New Game Plus. Having transcended Constellation, all people, everything and everyone you once knew, you find yourself caught between both sides as you chase your fellow augurs across the known universe to all new artifact locations. Will you throw your lot in with the almighty power of House var'uun and bring the dark ever closer? Or will you stand against them with these shepherds of humanity, benevolent augurs that wish to slow the serpent, perhaps stop it entirely? Will it be life or entropy? What does power mean to you, and to what end will you wield it? As beings capable of breaking all laws of reality fight tooth and nail to secure victory at all costs, you grow stronger and stronger with each new power the artifacts unlock. The path you walk in this strange state of existence is a lonely one, only a handful of fellow augurs joining alongside you when necessary. As you grow further and further away from what once resembled your humanity, a past life that now feels like some distant dream, you come to live only for the struggle of your side. From dying worlds to massive starships, the struggle rages on. And then, finally, there is a breakthrough, a way to meet the serpent at the heart of the universe, and decide the fate of all things, once and for all. As you meet with your fellows on the streets of New Atlantis before the final assault, the humans pass by without so much as a glance. It's hard to think you were once like them. They are not even aware of your presence. Launching the final assault on Earth, a NASA facility that once housed the first of those strange particles that fell from the heavens, the might of both sides meets in a battle that is so devastating it shakes reality itself. If you have chosen to side with var'uun, you must defend the gateway at the heart of the facility, and make sure not a single one of your foes makes it through. For the latter, the cultists must be stopped, before the serpent pulls through, and all will be lost. One by one, augurs on both sides fall until there is only you, the last of beings that were once thought to be gods, the final remnants of power that exceeded humanity's grasp. In securing the focus crystal to the gate at the heart of the facility, you step out to find yourself before not more augurs, but you and Constellation. But it is not you, a being from too long ago. You try to talk to this person, but the words are not getting through. It's as if talking to a newborn, incapable of proper speech or understanding. It is here, as power emanates from the gate behind you, that you realize you have a choice to make. Do you execute your past self and allow entropy to accelerate? Or will you join together, close the rift in reality these particles brought upon humanity, and stop the serpent once and for all? You make your choice. In the first scenario, you kill the members of Constellation and walk back into the gate as that presence you once sensed so long ago ripples through the space around you. The serpent is ready, and you fade into darkness for the final time. In the second scenario, you fight alongside your past self as you descend into the heart of the abyss and face the presence that has lingered at the edges of reality before even time itself. One by one, damaging the great serpent strips you of your powers, but so too does the creature hiss in agonizing pain. During the fight, a figure emerges from the gloom to defend her master, a lonely champion. It is Andrasia, but also not Andrasia, now completely corrupted by shadow. When it falls, you feel the darkness of this impossible space fall away, and a blinding light fill it in its place. You are pulled forward, flying in all directions as you surf along jet streams of light. You see a person take a step towards an artifact in a mine shaft long ago. You see the halls of Constellation, the moment you first took flight in your ship, the moment you watched the sun rise on a long-forgotten world. And as you are pulled along to the source of this light, parts of who you are fall away into the stream. First your weapons, your armors, but then your body begins to fade away. Your arms are slowly consumed into the brilliant shining gleam, and for the first time in a long, long time, you feel that same sensation return, that same warmth and sound that you felt when you first touched the artifact in the mineshaft so long ago. And thus ends the story of Starfield. Hopefully you got some kind of enjoyment out of it. Like I've said before, I do this stuff for a bit of fun, rather than being a nepotistic hack who fails upwards. If I theoretically was given the chance to write a new universe, I'd throw all of this away entirely and redo it from scratch. But in fairness, I made this pitch with the assumption that I had to work with the bones of what was already there. Bethesda creativity, everyone. 25 years in the making, and still they can't help gimping other, far better IPs. If you're still here, maybe it gives you a better idea of what happens when there's actual narrative structure and payoff, not to mention a central theme rather than tired, self-referential nostalgia bait. Or maybe you don't. Maybe this is a terrible video, I'm a terrible person, and you must defend the honor of a multi-billion-dollar company that doesn't even know or care that you exist. If it's the latter, well, Starfield is the best possible game for you, and I sincerely hope you never have to think about lifting your head from the trough.